Help us understand, and there's a real tension sometimes with these theological statements and theological words, but help us understand a little bit about the tension between, or perceived tension between predestination and free will.
Boy, that's such a big question. I know we won't be able to discuss all of it, but I do know some listeners might not agree with everything that I have to say. But as best as I can, let me give you, I think, what I believe to be the biblical position. The Bible so puts it that our hearts are so far astray in our sin that we are incapable of choosing God. If that sounds strange to some hearers, many of my hearers are going to be aware of the Calvinist Arminian debate on this issue, and they may be surprised to hear that both Jacob Arminius and John Calvin both believed that the human will was utterly incapable of choosing for Christ. We were so lost in sin that unless God provides grace to us prior to our decision, we cannot be saved. Now, the difference between those two men is that Arminius believed that God provides that grace to everyone, and Calvin said, no, only to those who genuinely are saved. I'm not going to get into all of that, but let me say this. Predestination, as I understand it, is God's determination to elect His own. According to Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4, that God chose us before the foundation of the world. And so that should provide us this assurance that when I'm saved, I am saved because God has had mercy on me, not because I've been so wise that I've chosen for God. And so I think that's the starting off place. Now, in relationship to free will, I would say this. Free will functions in such a way that I do the dictates of my heart. Whatever my heart dictates to me, I am free to do. Of course, God sometimes puts restrictions around that, but so I find that prior to coming to Christ, my heart tells me to hate the things of God, which I do in freedom. But when God's grace comes to me, He changes my heart. And so I begin to love the very things I once hated. And so now I freely choose for God, even while God's action predestined me into the kingdom. So I don't know if you can follow me. Maybe you've got some other questions about that. But I think the two of them actually work in a similar way. We choose freely, but we would not be able to choose for Christ if God did not release my heart to love Him.